Hey everybody, it's Lavender Town, and today I'm adding to my series where I turn random stuff into cute character designs. Today I'm going to be turning different teas into character designs. So starting with one of my very favorite types of tea, and that is chamomile. Now chamomile is a tea that's known for making people sleepy or relaxed, and there's actually a chemical in it that causes that effect. It's very, very calming. It's great to drink before bed or really any time that you're feeling stressed out. Weirdly enough, I started drinking tea for this exact reason when I was in college and I was getting way too stressed, and I was drinking a lot of caffeinated things which only make you feel more anxious. The only thing that really made me feel better was this little potion I used to make for myself out of warm chamomile tea and almond milk, and it always made me feel a lot better. I associate this tea with sort of warm months like spring and summer, even though I used to drink it in the winter to warm up all the time, just because chamomile comes from these beautiful little daisy-like white flowers, and I sort of associate that more with spring because, you know, flowers. And I basically just wanted her to look like a very relaxed character design. I wanted her to have that summery, springy feel. I gave her this little sundress with these little translucent sleeves. Generally, I just wanted her to look like a really peaceful and cute character. I braided some of the chamomile flowers into her hair, as well as having little bits of ivy in various different places on her as well. I tried to incorporate both the color of chamomile tea when it's brewed, which is sort of like a light goldenish color, as well as the actual flowers themselves. I sort of just put them everywhere that I could think of. If you look carefully, you even see that her like petticoat lace underneath her dress is actually just chamomile flowers pressed flat underneath it, which I thought was kind of cool. And of course I braided the flowers into her hair, I put it on her hat, and it's even in her eyes, and on the lower lashes of one of her eyes as well. And with that, I did a little bit more shading and coloring and messing around with the lines, and then she was basically done. All she needs is a name. If you can think of one that you think suits her, definitely let me know. The names I picked from the last video are Pokecool had a good point. I think Uranus's name should stay the same because it's important to her character. I liked Nico for Neptune, and Pacifica for Pluto is a really cute name. Thank you guys for all the suggestions. Next up, I wanted to do my little sister's favorite tea, and that is matcha. Now, matcha is a Japanese tea, and it's actually one of the healthiest teas that you can possibly get because it's a powder rather than just soaking the leaves in hot water. You get a lot more of the antioxidants and stuff from the tea because you're actually eating like the ground tea leaves. It's a type of green tea, and it's super concentrated. A lot of people don't like it, and a lot of people love it. It's pretty divisive in that way, so I decided that this character was going to be a little bit aloof and standoffish to represent the bitterness of matcha tea. When it's mixed with a lot of sugar, it can make for some delicious desserts, and I think there's a lot of girls out there who their favorite frappuccino is matcha as well. So it has a lot of appeal despite its initial bitterness. In the preparation of matcha, traditionally you're supposed to mix the powder into the water with this cool little wooden like brush thing. You see it in traditional Japanese tea ceremonies a lot, so I decided to use that implement in her design in a few different places. Because she's so very healthy, I decided to put it on her back like angel wings, and I also had it as like a hair ornament at the top of her hair. I wanted her to look sort of cute despite her aloof attitude, so I was trying to balance those two things. And then I very loosely had a little bit of a Japanese sort of aesthetic with her clothes, but I didn't try to go too traditional or accurate with it. I was just basically doing anything that I thought would look cool. I decided to make her pretty slim since a lot of people use green tea to help them lose weight, and I just generally wanted her to look very slight and small, just because I know that matcha is often served in really little cups rather than big old mugs like chamomile and black teas, so I wanted to try to visualize that in some way. I think she turned out pretty cute. I did something a little weird with her eyes where I was trying to show that it's like a powder. I don't know if that worked terribly well, but it definitely makes her look more interesting. And then for the colors, I went green all the way. Matcha has a really beautiful natural color. It's actually kind of surprising that they don't use any artificial colors at all. It just really has this very bright, vivacious green, and it can look more pastel-y depending on how much water you dilute it with. So I had a variety of different pastel and dark greens throughout her whole design, and I only had warm colors really in the little spindly like wood parts of the design. Even her skin is pretty greenish. I hope she doesn't look too sick. I just wanted her to really look like the manifestation of this tea, and not like a human, but more like spirit of matcha, I guess. I think she turned out pretty adorable, and I really like her even if I don't like matcha in real life. Next up is the Earl. Earl Grey is probably the easiest to humanize of all the teas because it already has the title of a person in the name. I think that the image of a stern gentleman comes to mind probably for almost everyone when they hear Earl Grey for the first time. It just sounds like a guy who's really fancy and maybe a little stern, and especially if you've ever had Earl Grey by itself with no sweetener or milk, you will definitely agree probably. It has a stern taste to it. It's not like heinously bitter, but it's definitely not, it doesn't have any natural mildness or sweetness. It's just very like stiff upper lip, punch you right in the face with some caffeine. It's the closest, I think, to coffee of all the teas that I've drank, where I feel like it really needs something mixed in with it, and then it becomes quite delicious. It also has a bit of a like herbal or flowery taste to it that I don't usually like in teas, which is weird because it's not an herbal tea, it's a black tea for sure. But since it's a traditional English tea, I tried to make him look like a Englishman, also just a kind of older guy, even though all these teas are very old, and matcha certainly is older than Earl Grey, I would assume, but I just felt like personality wise he would be the older like patriarch of the family. I was almost starting to picture the teas as like girls at a boarding school or something, and this would be like the headmaster that's like always like, hey, is your uniform out of place or something? I don't know. I've obviously never been to boarding school. For the colors, I tried to stick to darker gray colors. Obviously, Earl Grey tea is not actually gray, but I thought that the name really suited the gray color palette, and I actually kept things relatively cool, also just to visually separate him from a lot of the other characters that were going to be in this, because most teas are some shade of brown, like honestly. Other than matcha, basically they all are some shade of brown, so I just decided to go with more of the color from the name rather than the literal color. And if you look at what Earl Grey looks like outside of the bag before it is soaked in water, it is very like black gray color, so that's sort of what I went with. I gave him a teapot cane and a teacup hat, and in the end I think he looks really cool. Next up, I would say this is one of the best gateway teas if you're not into tea yet, and that is chai tea. Now technically chai tea is just tea. Chai is a word to mean tea, so it's like the Libre tar pits, you know, or ATM machine. It's one of those things, but chai masala is actually the chai tea that most people are used to. It has like milk in it and cinnamon, and it's just completely delicious. Chai is one of the sweeter teas by its very natural state, and it just tends to be quite a delicious warming tea. It's the spiciest tea that we have in the lineup so far, so I wanted her to be the most like spiciest character. I kind of always assumed that chai was not a black tea but some special kind of tea of its own, but it turns out it's actually just black tea with a ton of other really good spices that completely changes the flavor. So usually it has things like ginger, cinnamon, star anise, which I actually put on her hair because I thought that looked kind of like a cute little ornament, and a lot of other things. Sometimes there's even like black peppercorns, like the type of pepper that you grind onto food. It's just a very in-your-face, explosive flavor-wise kind of tea. So I wanted her to have a lot of energy and just look like a very fun, exciting character. I honestly don't know what I was doing with her outfit. It was sort of just completely random. I didn't really have any ideas for her, so it ended up looking kind of weird. I just wanted it to look a little flirtatious and sort of like a looser fabric, but other than that, I didn't really know what I was doing. So I feel like outfit-wise, she's probably one of the weakest ones, but I still really like her because she stands out a lot from the total lineup, and I really like the color palette I chose for her. I did a nice, rich sort of red-brown color for most of her whole design because I feel like that's not only the color of chai tea, but also the color of the spices in it, as well as just suiting her warm, sort of spicy personality with these warm colors. I tended to pull it to more of a dusty, rosy pink sort of coloration, not because that's more accurate, but just because I thought it would look prettier. I also decided to give her some random moles on her skin because chai tea often has little flecks of the spices actually floating around in it, and I was just trying to sort of give a nod to that. Last but not least is dessert tea. Now, dessert tea isn't as strictly defined as a lot of these other more classic teas, but it's basically just a category that refers to any type of tea that's being flavored to taste like a baked good or something in that sort of category, like any tea that's flavored like caramel or made to taste like a lemon loaf or, you know, birthday cake or something like that. A lot of teas try to add particular flavors to them to give that sort of feeling. And a lot of the times if you'll go to an actual tea service or something, they'll have teas like this that are supposed to taste like almond biscotti or something really specific. I find these really delicious and they're very nice for special occasions, so I wanted to throw this category in here. So for this character, the goal was super sugary sweet, just really communicating this celebratory and super sugary sort of flavor profile. I wanted her to have a lot of colors and have this sort of Alice in Wonderland over the top sweetness with some sweet Lolita in there. Just a lot of sweet. Because usually these teas are best with sugar and milk. A lot of teas I think are really good with just a little honey or completely by themselves, but dessert teas pretty much always need straight up white sugar and some kind of milk in them. I particularly like oat milk for these as well because it's a richer type of milk. I think cashew milk would work well, almond milk should work fine. I'm sure normal cow milk would also be good as well. Kind of whatever you can do to like lighten it up and give the sugar something to hold on to, the fats in the milk. Anyway, so for this character, yeah, I just wanted her to look really cute and excitable, like she's all hyped up on sugar. I gave her a big old teapot backpack, which honestly I want in real life. And I modified this Sweet Lolita dress so it doesn't just look like Sweet Lolita. And with that, our full family of teas is done. Now, I had a lot of other teas I could potentially do, so I could either do a part 2 to this video, or we could go on to a totally different thing that I'm turning into character designs. If you have ideas for any of that, let me know. And of course, any names that you have for these characters, you can comment them and I might pick them in the next character design video as their official names. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you so much to my patrons, including Bella Story, Blue Boy, Cal Pompon, Clockwork Construct, Crazy Panda, Dionysus Hadrilis, Dr. Casket, Elizabeth Album, Hope Chilsum, Imagine Creations, JJ Jade, Joseph Copel, Carla Tapia, Katie Marigold, Kira Tadern, Megan Claire, Midnight Doodles, Micah Dactyl, Moose Deer Rachel, Nora Cornelison, Okamore, Ollie, Rosie Warlock, Sergeant Pendulum, The Artsy Moose, Your Boy ST, and Zoe Stardust.